Hi golfers, Nick here from Golf Tech. In today's video, we're going to talk about the chicken wing in the golf swing. You see this in the follow through as the arms bend in the finish. We're going to talk about why this happens, how this affects the shot, and give you some drills to help you golfers out there play better golf. Swing here. You can see my arms are very straight as I go through. First up golfers, you see the chicken wing from the front view with the arms kind of bending. You also see this in the follow through. You see this left elbow. I see this a lot as the golfer swings through. The first thing you see in the follow through is the kind of left elbow from the side view camera, and obviously from the front view you see the arms bending. Now this does a few things. It shortens the length of the club, so the club is shorter when you bend your arms, you pull those elbows apart, which causes generally some toe strikes. Also, bending these arms as you go through can kind of open up the club face. It affects how you release the club as you swing through to the finish. It can affect the speed as well, so it causes a lot of issues. But I know golfers aren't choosing to make this move in the finish, but they're doing it for a reason, and that reason is generally a result of their low point control. Either the club's coming too far from the outside, they're having to flex their arms, they're hitting the heel, could be flexing their arms, but generally the main reason you see this is because that golfer, as they come into impact, their low point of their swing is behind the ball. If I was to keep my arms straight, my low point back, I would hit the ground there, and as you could see, you could hear the sound of that. I kind of hit the ground first, then hit the ball, which generally results in an upward attack angle. So instead of hitting the ground first, that golfer then decides that as he comes through, I'm going to kind of flex my arms as I come through, which still kind of results in an upward attack angle, but generally you'll start to see the shots hitting the toe side of the club, and again, upward attack angle. Although that shot was better, technically that shot was better, but my arms were bent as I hit through. So it kind of opens the face, hits the toe strike, you lose a lot of ball speed off the face, but it can work. And sometimes you see this where golfer comes into impact, their kind of arms bend as they come through. If they time it right, they hit a good shot. And that's important to note, because a lot of golfers think that they're inconsistent, or they have good and bad days, because generally a result of what their arms are doing as they come into the ball. Like some days they'll time this well and they'll play well. Some days they won't and they'll play badly if they don't bend their arms the right amount at the right time. So ideally we want to keep those arms straight, but generally that's a result of where that club's hitting the ground. I can only really keep my arms straight if I can control my low point. So make the tiny swing here. You can see my arms are very straight as I go through. I struck that a little bit better, wasn't quite perfectly out the middle, but definitely a lot better, and my attack angle was down on the ball. And that's very important. It's not just about hitting down, it's really about where your club hits the ground. And generally those arms are bending because that club's hitting too far behind the ball. So in today's video, we're going to talk about how we can kind of train this a little bit. We're going to kind of work on some drills, some tips that kind of I work with students here in the Bay. So I'm going to take my kind of normal setup here. Hips slightly forward, weight slightly on the left here. As I set up here, I've got my arms and elbows pretty tucked in close together. They're not super close, they're not pulled apart. This elbow kind of faces the target, this right one's kind of tucked under a little bit more at setup here, but it feels like my elbows are pretty close together. So in an ideal world, I should be able to keep those elbows the same distance apart as I go through, and then technically the arm should be pretty much dead straight at this point here. Eventually this left elbow would bend, but that doesn't happen until later in the swing. I see it too early. As you come through, the issues I see are the elbow is the first thing you see in the follow through, instead of seeing the club head, then the elbow. And that's the chicken wing. So as the golfer goes through, they bend too early, too quickly. This kind of helps you take the club out of the ground, stops you from hitting too much ground, but it's not the right way to do it. So this is the kind of first step to kind of learning the feels and the movements that you have to create to be able to keep your arms straight. Now, there are other reasons why people bend their arms. The swing path could be a reason, the swing direction can be a reason, but we're going to focus really on how to move the body here. So I'm just going to take kind of my normal setup here, weight slightly to the left. Now, as I go through, what I'm going to do is, the first step here is just to learn how to sequence these movements in the follow through. So as I go through here, I'm just pushing up and forward, bending backwards here. So you have to try and feel like you take the club or the raise the butt of the club here by extending your legs, bending backwards and pushing your hips forward. So I don't feel like I'm doing too much on my arms here. I think, like I said, the golfers that bend their arms, they bring the club out of the ground by pulling up with their arms. Best golfers will use their body, pushing the hips forward and extending backwards. So this is where I'd start. Wouldn't make a backswing, I would just get that golfer to feel like they're pushing their hips forward, extending their legs, raising the belt. To bring that club up from the side view, you'll see how my right shoulder's low, it's tilted. That's given me the kind of ability to maintain my head position. So I'm not just standing up, I'm also tilting this right shoulder as I move forward. So that'll be the first step, just to train that movement. If you can start there and you can do that, then you can start to build in some swings. So that'll be step one, no backswing. I'm just swinging short finish here. Next step would be to start to incorporate a very small backswing. I'd tell the golfer, take the club to the edge of the mat here. Same movement as they go through. Just to train that. Once I'm happy with that, look at some videos, it's pretty good. Then we'll start to hit some shots. So we're just going to go edge of the mat and then get that same feeling as we go through. That'll be kind of the first step. Inevitably that golfer will start to probably swing a bit longer than the end of the mat there. It doesn't have to be exactly there, but it's really more about not putting too much power into this and just learning how to move the hips, take the club out the ground by using the body. So that'll be step two, just small backswing. Next step would be, once they can do that a few times, do that 5-10 times, make sure it looks good on the video. The next step would then be to start to build up the power here. So I'm going to go to position 3 where the left arm is parallel and then get the same feel in the finish. So you can notice here I'm just stopping at this point, because at this point it's a very good checkpoint for your swing. When your arm's parallel to the ground in the follow through, the right shoulder should be tilted. The weight should be pretty much all on the left side of my lower body. My head should be very stable from this viewpoint here. Like I said, I see golfers bend their arms, pulling the club up. I also see issues where that golfer kind of stays forward bent with their shoulders like this. This also doesn't create any space to keep your arms straight. If you go through and bend down, you have to kind of pull the arms up to not hit too much ground and to take the club out of the ground so you don't get too steep into the ball. So you see a variety of issues why this causes this chicken wing, but the main thing is that you're learning how to push your hips forward and extend backwards. You can see my chest here is backwards. This is giving me the space here. And when the arms reach parallel, both arms should be pretty straight at that point. The right shoulder tilted, hips forward, head stable. So I'm creating the space here for my arms by bending backwards. So that'll be the next step. So you've got step 1 is no backswing. Step 2, edge of the mat, same feel. And then step 3, left arm parallel, and then the same feel in the finish. If that golfer can sequence their movements and coordinate their movements on each of those steps, then you can try and start to hit some full shots. I think it's very important when you're training your swing, you have to break it down. Plenty of practice swings to try and develop the feel that you need in the finish. If you can't get this position without a backswing, you've got zero chance as soon as you put a ball there and make a swing. So you have to develop the technique, you have to train it, right? This is not something that is easy for some people. For me here, I've done this a million times. I can get that movement right, I can do it with a swing as well. So I think that you have to reprogram and retrain your swing. Like I said, that golfers that bend their arms, they're doing that to control the strike. It's probably helping them. Like I mentioned, it's stopping them from taking the ground too much behind the ball. It's giving them the ability to bring the club out of the ground because they're not using their body very well. So you have to sequence the movements in the right way. It's not a case of if you bend your arms, just keep your arms straight. It's probably going to make it worse. So you have to build this up. You have to reprogram and retrain your swing to help you control your arms and stop that chicken wing. So thanks for watching, golfers. Hopefully that video helped. If it did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already, please follow me on my other social media platforms. And I'll see you again next week for another video.